because I keep getting questions from people and I don't know what's happening. Like I'm supposed to all of a sudden know, and I was like, no, I don't have any new information. We'll talk.
No,
Yeah.
no, we will. Actually, I think I'm gone, so we probably need to pick a time before next Tuesday.
Okay.
I am gone next Tuesday as well, so we won't have our regular meeting, so
All right.
we need to find another time, but I'm glad.
Before our Tillamook tomorrow at 4, never mind. Maybe
After this
Friday?
meeting.
Yeah, when I talk with Ellen, anyway,
We'll figure it out.
we'll figure it out.
Okay.
Okay, let's get started. Welcome, everyone, to the February 4th board briefing. Commissioner Fournier may join us remotely at some point. We have one topic to talk about today, and it is the HHS administrator recruitment. And we could just jump right in. Are you going to lead us off?
I do.
Okay.
Marlene Sanders will speak information.
Okay.
So I've been talking with Marlene, as well as Erin, over the last several months as she's been planning for her recruitment. There's also two other retirements coming up in her office, the chief medical officer and chief financial officer. So that information is in your packet. Just so you know that there's a lot going on. There's a lot of considerations here and a couple of the requests of you to consider today as part of the recruitment apply to those other positions as well, not just Marlene. So just wanted to kind of bring all that to the forefront in one package, and then we are focusing on her recruitment today. So I'll just let Marlene.
Mm-hmm. As Rachel already mentioned, there are two other positions. One is in process, which you may be aware of, and I know Commissioner Scar is the Chief Medical Officer. We started that recruitment, I think in October. So with the anticipation and hearing from other federally qualified health centers, and it might take a while. So to that end, both my position and the CFO position or Chief Financial Officer, we're going to try to allow more than just a month or two period of time for those recruitments. So my position in particular in the federally qualified health center world is referred to as the CEO. And I know in our county structure, it's the administrator for this particular department. So when you see that, I tried to put /CEO/administrator. So when we're working on the recruitment, we're going to let the recruiter that we've selected be aware of that information. But so there's some context for you. And also, as Rachel mentioned, we've been talking about this, and I've also been discussing it with our liaison, Commissioner Scar, for months about, how are we going to do the recruitment? Who are we going to use? Are we just going to go through the county to conduct a recruitment? And came to the decision that we should work with the recruiter. So recruiters are expensive in healthcare and everywhere. So we're using a recruiter for our other positions on the medical side, specialized or targeted to a specific position or skill set. Similarly with this position, and we talk to other recruiters who recruit for C-suite positions, and they are $50,000 to $100,000 per recruitment. And I also received a recruitment from Prothman for positions in Montana and someplace else, and said, they do recruitment for my position. So, and the price is right to a certain degree, if you will. The process is actually very similar to what one would use with any other recruiter, and they have the experience and context that we think will work for the recruitment for this position. I've heard from others that there are a number of people looking for positions in healthcare, especially in administrative roles or executive roles, and new grads or fairly new folks who are coming out with cutting edge, tech and knowledge about these roles. So there's some opportunities out there. Again, context. So with that in mind, and I say we because HR, Rachel and team, reached out and got information from Prothman, and they gave us a proposal with multiple components in it. And we talked about, how would that work? And what's the timeline? If I forget something, you're like, we need to bring this up. jump in. So recognizing that the desire is to have maybe a couple weeks to a month overlap for a new position that we would need to be making an offer in May to June if I'm going to be leaving in July. So told that Kelly, and I don't know who else was involved along with Rachel, but reached out to Prothman and they came back with this proposal that I was just discussing. The summary is listed there. And there's a little more detail that Maya and I put together and provided that will guide us through what we need to take, what steps we need to take if you agree to sign the proposal for work with Prothman. The timeline, as you can see it's a document called Health and Human Services Administrator / CEO Recruitment Overview. The bottom of the page provides a timeline starting right now and running through July 1 of 2026. So during the early weeks right now is really gathering information for a profile, and that includes interviewing people who we might decide, and when I say we, I mean the Health Council Board or staff at the health center, and we, meaning the Board of County Commissioners, folks that you might think partners that would need and want input in the selection of this position. They said in our conversation, they would interview as many people as we wanted to interview. And that was included in the cost. The additional above 18,000 had to do, I think, with more marketing kinds of materials if we wanted to do more in that regard. So beginning with, hey, who are these interested people? We should interview and find out what they want in this role. Then developing that profile, and Prothman would do that and send it out to their contacts nationally and through a direct mail, and then they would follow up with their process of outreach and engagement and would come up with a screening of the applications they receive and narrow it down to 6 to 12 candidates that they think would be the top candidates for the position. And then they would come and share it with a pre-selected team here to narrow it further for interviews. And then we would conduct interviews in May-ish and then be prepared to make an offer at that point. So in I don't know if this is easier to bring up or me just to talk through it, but the steps in the process that I mentioned and the timeline that we have kind of mean we need to move fairly quickly on identifying who's going to be on our teams and who we're going to interview. So Rachel and I assume again your team and my team were going, okay, who's going to be involved, and came up with a list of who the lead folks are from HR and who would be the lead folks in the Health and Human Services Department. They're listed in your document called Roles, Functions, and Timelines right after this overview summary. And it indicates in there that Kelly will be the recruiter team leader from HR and provide team support. And from our department, Anya Reeser, who's our Chief Operations Officer, will be the coordination and key contact and basically do all the scheduling and set up those kinds of things working with Kelly. And then Maya, who's here, is also logistical support for our side, just all the provider schedules and setting up interviews and those kind of things, because we're on very different schedule tools for people. So then it's who are those key folks that need to be involved in the process? And who are those key stakeholders that you may want to interview? So on our side, from the interview standpoint, I talked to managers and they all want to have an input into this position and have provided some input to me, but should provide it to our recruiter. We need to have Health Council members involved due to our co-applicant agreement status. And we talked with our executive committee and identified our current chair, another officer, and another Health Council member. and one at-large member, including the people that are listed on here. And these are for like some initial interviews. And we also identified some key partners that we work with closely, such as the Columbia Pacific Coordinated Care Organization, Tillamook Bay Community College Healthcare Program Coordinator. She's on our board, but we also work with them on, their clinical rotations and the like. There's a couple others listed in there. So we would ask then if you as Board of County Commissioners had other key stakeholders that you would like to have interviewed, if you want all three of you to be interviewed or other staff to be interviewed, and we should get that list to them this week. Again, I'm assuming we're signing the agreement, but that's part of this discussion, yeah.
Yeah, so the agreement is ready to go. It's within my purview to sign. I just don't want to move too far ahead without the board, because I know this is a really important position with a very extensive process, which is a little unusual for a director position. Just make sure you were supportive of what the process is going forward, and also just to make sure that you are clear in where your role is in this, because there are a lot of different steps. And if you wanted to make any adjustments, we can do that. And so, yeah, we're ready to sign following the meeting today.
Great.
Yeah. So I'm just talking through what that
Yep.
extensive process is that she has or that I just was mentioning here. So we would, again, on their timeline, do those key informant interviews that would inform the recruitment and the document that Prothman sends out. Then we would have final candidate site visit and interviews. They talked about if there was a need, we could change the process. That's included in their proposal. Like, how do we want to do the interviews? Do we want to have panel interviews? Do we want to, if we do get this really big list of candidates and narrowing it down, maybe we want to interview more than 3, but we don't want to necessarily pay for all of those folks to come out. We could do a virtual interview and then narrow it to our top couple candidates, those kind of things. So we still have to have a selection committee and who would be involved from both co-applicants. So identifying who you would like to have represented in the interviews, panels, or whatever process we agree upon with Prothman, and which HR staff. And I've listed the ones in there that I thought for the workshop to develop the final interview process and to select folks from my best guess in this process. And then what would happen in the final interviews would probably be the same candidate, same group of people that would be in interviews. So we listed also final interview participants on this list, and how we conduct the interview process will be developed jointly between the Health Council, the Board of County Commissioners, Prothman, and any other HR and folks that we identify.
Yeah.
I think that's pretty much the process. They would also develop the questions with us based on the interviews and input that they receive, what would be important questions to ask.
I think it's also just important to note that this is probably a very fluid timeline, and this is a list of people. This is a jumping off point on where Marlene and I think folks would plug in, but it's certainly subject to change. So looking for some initial input and thumbs up, and then there's opportunity to adjust as we go forward.
Thumbs up for me.
All right.
Yeah, it seems like a great process. And you're asking if we have additional stakeholders or if we want to be involved. I would be happy to be interviewed by Prothman to sing your praises and talk about the things that I think are invaluable in your position. I don't have to be. I imagine that I would say very similar things to my colleague here, but I'm happy to be. And at the moment, I can't think of any additional key stakeholders in addition to the ones you've already listed, but I will think about that. I appreciate the thought and planning that's gone into this. Obviously, it is a big deal and it's complicated.
I do see Commissioner Fournier's joined us. I don't know if you want to say a few.
Oh, thank you.
I'll pause on this part because do you want me to
Yeah, then we'll
talk about the
pivot to
2 other
the-
pieces?
yeah.
Okay.
Commissioner
If Paul
Fournier,
has
or
any-
Yeah, I'd just give a thumbs up as well.
Thank you.
Okay.
And I think Marlene will change the date to today. We can revise it because it says January 15th, just because
Yeah.
it's been waning for a little bit. We'll get that changed.
Mhm. And I think you also mentioned, I put together a timeline and it has some actual dates in here, which I realize some of them will have to be fluid. But timelines are going to be important because we're trying to bring together, like, I don't know how many different people
Mhm.
to hold interviews on the same day and to like fly maybe a couple people out and meet with them and figure out how that process is going to work for tours and so forth, and pulling people out of meetings or, scheduled patient time.
Yeah, I think once Prothman gets under contract and we run this by them, I think we should definitely firm up some calendar holds for the boards.
Yeah.
Yeah, and April 13th, 17th, I don't know if that's gonna be budget hearing week or not. Might be the week before. Wait for that calendar to come out, but yeah, I think we should certainly get some holds on for some. of
Yeah.
these.
Okay. That sounds good.
So I think that concludes the overall process contract piece, and then we wanted to pivot to some recruiting tools around vacation and relocation expenses.
Mm-hmm. Let me see. Stuff here. So as a result of starting recruitment for the chief medical officer, in anticipation of looking at this position, the chief financial officer, even our behavioral health clinician, she's retiring the end of this month, but we're waiting and trying to cover with other staff until we can figure out how we want to proceed with that role. We're still gathering information. We found out that, not surprisingly, people pay a lot of money when they transfer to come to work for a new community in a new state. And some of them are with county and state government, and some of them are with private entities. So one of the things that we found out in our recruitment for the medical officer is a lot of questions about what's happening with reimbursement for relocation. And the second item was paid time off. In the private sector, they receive a chunk of, some of them it's unlimited PTO, and some of them there's 6 to 8 weeks. There's a whole bunch of strings. I'm sticking with that phrase because that's what Rachel and I talked about. There's a lot of strings that come with these kinds of things that some folks in the role, when discussed with them, said, I've never taken PTO because I can't meet the measurements that exist for my performance in order to keep this place functioning. People have taken a couple weeks, some people up to, after a couple years, 4 weeks. But anyway, so we learned from this process that people are not looking favorably, having been in an executive position for, could be 10 years or more, that they're going to have 8 hours of leave that they're going to accrue in a certain period of time. And they're like, I can't do that. That's not typical and not acceptable, basically. So gathered a little bit of information talking with our recruiter and finding out about relocation expenses and kind of the rates that they are reimbursing and how much it costs to move somebody. And for anyone who's moved recently, they probably are more familiar, but it was shocking to me of the weight of a household and the cost of gas and so forth. So in some of your materials, you'll see there's examples of like up to $50,000-$60,000 to transfer a couple cars and to move somebody's home, and the cost of meals and someone to pack up their material and all of those things, to true ups or adjustments so that they don't lose any of the benefit of the cost. So you're paying kind of the tax impact as well. So it's been raised, the rate's been raised. That is not feasible. Even the lower rates of 27,000 are not reasonable.
I will tell you,
When you sent that to me and I just started, I'm skimming triage and work and I saw that and I'm like, Marlene, I cannot deal with a 27,000 relocation expense.
I couldn't deal with that either.
It was not that.
Yeah, like, no, we're gonna pay $50,000. No, we couldn't afford to do it. And I think that people know when they're coming for a county, state, or government job, that they're not gonna get that kind of reimbursement, even, requesting, I think, the amount, I'm trying to remember, is it 2,000 that we had before, or 1,500 with receipts? So, we looked at the cost if someone was to, rent a U-Haul and actually pack their own stuff and drive their own car and said, okay, and what can we afford? And we haven't adjusted our rate within our department for some time. So we proposed in this draft of 5,000 for relocation expenses, and we kind of said in Oregon, but we didn't actually figure out mileage calculations. I'd be interested to hear what the other department directors said, like, oh no, it should be a mileage so many miles away or something. But we were thinking something that would be closer within Oregon, that they would still have the same amount of time potentially to move and pack, and up to 7,500 to relocate outside of Oregon, recognizing there are going to be expenses above and beyond this that we just can't afford to pay. We listed and narrowed down the list of relocation items and did not include the gross up amount to cover the tax portion of that. So, and those are listed here as well for what we would cover. And it's a draft document with little highlighted areas. It's to be filled in on the relocation expenses. And there would need to be, just like we would with any of our other offers, it would be part of their offer letter saying, these are contingent upon all the other lists of things that you need to have, your license and credentialing and so forth. And if someone were to leave the position within X period of time, then we may or may not decide we want to ask for some of those funds back. That is language that we could look at for a specific type of agreement. But we were focused on, can we offer an additional amount in order to be competitive with some of our other applicants that are asking for more, at least show some increase. So.
Yeah, that's what Marlene presented to me, and then, along with the vacation one, but we'll take them separate.
Yeah.
Presented that to the executive team in preparation for today. They were certainly supportive of increasing the relocation expenses. In talking with the HR team, we have actually provided between $1,500 and up to $4,500 in relocation expenses, and at least one member of the executive team described how that certainly didn't cover the costs.
Yeah.
So the executive team is supportive of up to 5,000 in Oregon and 7,500 outside of Oregon. We couldn't wrap our heads around how best to add a mileage in there as well, but we can't keep working on that. Additionally, they also supported a higher threshold with the recovery strings. So with the
Okay.
board support, we could dig into that a little bit more, and we just didn't have a lot of time to dig in too much on this one, but they are supportive of that. So if the board is agreeable to these benefits, HR could explore getting this documented in one of our policies.
I am supportive. I think particularly for C-suite recruitments, but also the what it costs to do anything is so much more expensive. So I know that we have talked about for other director recruitments, 1,500 to 3,000, and I've always felt like, yeah, that's really not enough. So I think this is good. Commissioner Fournier?
Yeah, I agree with the executive team's recommendation.
Thank you.
I would agree as well.
Okay.
And I did want to clarify, the reason we're also bringing it before the board is because we do want to extend this to our executive service recruitments, not just the ones that Marlene's working on.
Agree.
Yeah, okay. I don't think that was clear, but
Yeah.
I wanted to make sure it was.
Commissioner Fournier?
Yes, no, nothing. I was just saying, I figured that was the case.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
On the vacation. Did you have anything else to say about vacation, or did you cover that?
I think it's to be competitive, I guess. And to recognize, you can describe where it falls within the county structure and the executive support for it. I have some specific things, and I may have mentioned that in this draft document too, for similar kinds of work. So when someone starts, there's already OFLA FEMLA leave, so how that interfaces, with this is a legal thing. But also, when someone gets started in a particular role, there's some expectations, at least within our department, they'd have to, finish all of the mandatory training pieces. They typically can be done within the first month, and we don't want them to just cram it all into the first week. But also some requirements for those particular positions that shows competencies before they take leave. And they've assigned among their team when they're out who's doing what, and they understand enough of the role to be able to leave it and to leave it in good hands, instead of just like, well, I'm heading out. Yeah, thanks for the 4 weeks. Yeah, and now I'll leave in 3 months or something. So there's some other contingency strings, as we call them, on how would that work, and even potentially if they've used leave, what's that, if any, buyback. So just recognizing we have to do something because of the professional nature of the positions that we're recruiting for and the market expectations that they start with a leave bank. And then I don't know what happened with the other executive suites or executive team.
So when Marlene first brought this proposal, it gave me a little bit of pause because we have been talking about vacation and cash out and max accruals over the last year, and we've just concluded the process of changing some of that. And so I was like, oh, how do we work this in? As we've talked over the last year about this topic, there hasn't been overwhelming support for increasing max accrual because it pushes out the problem of people not being able to take vacation. And so we landed on adding in vacation cash out options, as well as there's going to be opportunities for executive service to manage their time a little bit differently as we move to the salary timekeeping model, which allows salaried employees to not have to take leave for every single hour they're off, depending on how their schedule is managed. So we didn't want to exacerbate a problem. So we landed on the vacation cash out options, and there was some support for max accrual, but given the other things, the other tools in our toolkit, we decided to put pause on that. And so that is where we've been in looking at this proposal, certainly acknowledging the situation that new executives are stepping into without vacation. And Commissioner Bell's mentioned it several times. I was just trying to think outside the box on what we could do that didn't upset the apple cart, so to speak. If we gave executive service a higher tier vacation when they walk in the door, how are employees who've been here 15 years going to feel about that when they've earned that tier over time? And so just thinking through that, an idea I came up with that I shared with Marlene, and she seemed to be supportive of that, as well as the executive team, is the 4 weeks, which is 160 hours, is pretty close to our first tier, which is 156 hours. If we front-loaded 156 hours to these executive hires, but then froze their accrual, they in essence would receive the same amount in that year, but they would have it on the front end. And there's a lot of strings that I think we still need to look at. If they left, could they cash out? I think that would be prorated on what they would have earned when they were here. But I think it does add some flexibility that we haven't had before that on the surface seems equitable to me. So it's a proposal that the executive team is supportive of, is front-loading 156 hours, which is the first tier we have for vacation, which is equivalent to 13 days. But they wouldn't accrue any additional vacation until they're here for a year, and then their accrual would be at the 8.667, I think, thereafter. So that is the concept before you today. And that would, so unlike the relocation expenses, I think that's more of an administrative policy in HR, certainly with the board support. This one, I think should go in the employee manual because of how the rest of the vacation section reads in there. So given that the manual isn't adopted yet, we have time to work that in before it's adopted.
Great.
So ready for your consideration of that.
So I'm curious, for those like you, Commissioner Bell, who have been involved in executive hiring, do you think that meets what the executives have been asking for?
I think it's certainly an improvement, for sure. We have, since I've been here, we have offered people, directors in particular, executive level positions, we've offered them an additional 40 hours of paid admin leave, which is an acknowledgement that the vacation they were getting is inadequate. So I think this goes a long way to correcting that. So I guess my question, I will punt that question to Marlene and ask, do you think this makes us competitive? Do you think that the candidates that you hope to interview will think this is reasonable?
I would state it the way you did. It's definitely an improvement. One candidate was asking specifically like 6 weeks minimum. And so we're trying to talk about all the other benefits of working with the county. And so, and asking, have those candidates use that time? And that's where those comments came in. Well, yeah, I have unlimited leave. I've never like taken 3 months off or, something like that. So it's an improvement, a significant improvement. I think it will make us more competitive. Yes.
Okay.
And I think a concern is then they're gonna get a year up front, and if they use that whole, then they're accruing in the second year to be able to use again, right? So they're really not coming in with any more, they're just getting it front loaded. And I guess my question is, I'm not the right one to ask probably, but does that meet it? I was thinking of was it, not to call anybody out, sorry, Don, who basically had things that he was committed to and needed more time. So are we actually meeting that need, or really do executives need to start at a higher accrual rate? Because I think that, and I'll ask our attorney, but really when we get to non-rep and executive, any non-represented position, we have the ability, separate from what union gets, and to disconnect and to do this in a way, whether it's in the employee manual or whether it's in a contract with them. What are the tools that are available to us to personalize this, maybe separate from the employee policy? Or I mean, we just never have. Things have always been the same, but we're in this window of saying, just because we've always done it that way isn't the way we have to do it. And I know that you're not a labor attorney, but what tools maybe would be available to us?
I think, Commissioner, I think you're exactly right in that you have, especially with exempt and non-represented, and certainly if it's not in policy, is to put together a package, right? To draw the best candidates. But once that policy, once the policy is established, now you pretty much have put a box around ourselves. Then we have to operate within that. But even the policy can say, hey, we're going to be able to make it broad enough so you have that flexibility to put together something, right, to draw the best candidates, whether it is, vacation, right, whether it is reimbursement of cost, right, any of that, even, I guess, right, I'm just thinking as far as salary, and right, and we're working on that, right, and as far as also what we're going to pay for, whether credentialing, or right, or certifications, and I don't, maybe that's, in that position, maybe that is worthwhile. It's like, well, do you have this or do you have that, and we'll pay for that. And so I think at this point, it's that you can structure something, right, in order to draw the best candidates. But once, and so, and being mindful of a policy, we want that broad enough to be able to do that, because I think you would want that flexibility at the executive level, right? To put together things, because like, especially with this position, right? That is, now you're competing with industry, right? With that particular industry, across the board, where that's, maybe not with other department heads that it is like that, where you're not competing with the private sector so much, right? Because maybe the department head, that's really kind of government. You might be competing with other government entities, but not with private industry, which is now a little bit more, makes it, maybe at a disadvantage for government.
Right. So there's kind of a pro and a con to choosing this and setting it in policy. The pro is that it is, and then we don't have to worry about it. The con is that it doesn't leave us the flexibility. So again, this may be a labor attorney type question, but from a pay equity perspective, do we get ourselves into trouble if we set up independent packages for incoming executives?
I think, Commissioner, that if you're having it tailored to that position, and you'd be able to explain it why, especially, and this is a prime example, right, with health and human services, right? Because I think you are competing with private industry with that position, where another position, maybe you're not, and so you have, if that's your pool, that's your labor pool, and so in recognizing that, and so I think that you're not necessarily that you could tailor it for to that position, and be able to justify it.
I also think that, that I'm willing to consider having a different scale for executives. So I appreciate your sensitivity to what will people think who've been here for a long time, et cetera. But I think that it's reasonable to assume that there would be a different scale for executives. And, most people would understand that, I think. So, if what we have now is 4 weeks, you've had a candidate ask for 6, what about 5? I just think it's reasonable, not which, also doesn't address, will they actually be able to take that time? They might not, they might very well not, but I think it's worth discussing whether or not we should have an executive rate.
Yeah, Commissioner Fournier has.
Commissioner Fournier?
Hi, yeah, I just kind of want to echo what Brian said. I kind of like the idea. I guess I like the executive team's recommendation of the 4 weeks front loaded, but I also agree, and using Dawn as an example is perfect, is I think we have to have the flexibility depending on the candidate. And I think it's there's a way for us to structure this where this is the offer, but we also expect with this kind of position where we are competing with private sector, that we have to be able to somehow be open for negotiation on an individual basis for the right candidate. And I don't think I think to Mary Faith's point, it is different for an executive, and especially in a position like this. So I guess I don't want to be boxed in. I don't think we should be boxed in either. Like Brian talked about, I don't think we have to offer the most generous thing out of the box, but front loading a reasonable amount of time off, and then be open for negotiations, specifically if they have, vacations planned or there's other jobs that they're looking at, and they can point to them and say, well, this is what they're offering, I guess. So I like that flexibility too, with the front loading that the executive team working. That's all.
Thank you.
So then do we have to put something in our manual that says, or is it on the job description that says, dependent on experience or whatever, that indicates that we don't have a set amount, but that is really part of a package offer when you get into the executive hiring level? How do we, if we don't choose one, because I see the clarity of having one is that we have one and we don't have to do this, but how do we codify that we don't?
Can we memorialize front loading it and leave the number of hours flexible depending on experience?
There are a lot of options out there, and when I started to research this,
Yeah.
and about the legalities of setting it up for an individual or a group of people or a particular trade, and it would just got way too complicated, way too fast. including questions like you posed. What if a candidate has a vacation scheduled 2 weeks after they're supposed to start? Can they use this then, or do you go, well, we recognize that like we currently do. We would love for you to join us, and we basically now say, have a good vacation on your own dime, but come back and join us. So even to that kind of detail, if you're here for 60 days, you can use it with these 3 criteria. Well, it depends on the department and what their emergency requirements are. So I just kind of went, we need something. It would be nice to have something up front, and then to be able to create either universally or individually with the candidate, or even within our own departments, and say, these are the strings that need to be tied to this. And maybe we all agree, for example, you can't use it within the first month, or, you've already got whatever other leave. But I didn't have time to like research all those different options, and Rachel really didn't either. We said, we'll have these initial conversations and see if the concept is supported, and then we'll work on, I keep using the strings because that's the easiest way really to put all those in one spot. But yeah, it gives us a place to start and say we would be working on developing an executive service model for paid leave that would start when the employee starts, with details on how those would be determined based on the position and the requirements of the job. And then we do that. But is that too loose to have in a policy? Or, I don't know.
I don't know. I mean, I really like Brian's point about landing the candidate. We have had a really hard time landing candidates here.
Yeah.
And I don't want to disrespect the folks who have been here and spent a long time.
Yeah.
But as we look at executive candidates, we are looking at somebody who has spent a long time somewhere. It just didn't happen to be here. And they are coming in with an expectation that there is respect for the fact that they have gained the level of experience they have by spending a long time somewhere, and to come in at that very base rate, even if it's front loaded, I think that can feel a little bit rough. So I guess from my perspective, I appreciate the front loading. I think that is a good tool, but I also wonder if there isn't an additional number of hours that really should be available to be added, and whether we decide to do a process and set that and say, we're going to do something we've not done, which is to peel off executive from our pay table and actually have some different things that go with executive. If we want to do that as a process and come up with a standard and consistent piece, or if we want to say in the executive, there is the flexibility upon hiring. So, I mean, I think we can go
Front
either
load
way.
plus TBD.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So I guess I would, curious thoughts from my fellow commissioners.
I agree with you. It's especially like the acknowledgement of the years of experience we hope people are going to bring to this job, and also that what we pay in terms of vacation may be may fit in with our comparators, but it certainly doesn't fit in with other places, including other counties that are bigger. And so we want people to come to us with great experience, but it will be, it isn't how I want to offer the job to somebody, to say, please come join us, and you're going to get, a lot less vacation. So maybe a little less is fair for a small county, so yes, I think we should be looking at the number.
Commissioner Fournier, did you have thoughts on what I said?
Yeah, I think I agree with you. I think I was trying to say something like that. I also just want to, as far as peeling off the executives, I think it's important, and I really appreciate when we're using terms like equitable and all that, but I also, there are just different jobs. And I used to have a metaphor for police work where there's a difference between being fair and being equitable. And, someone in a particular position, it's hard to, which we've already discovered this, it's hard to compare a manager from one department to another department because there's so many variables. So I like what you said. I think that's what I'm trying to say is we need to have something that at least a carrot to get them interested. And then the understanding that we are in a competitive, very competitive space for getting good candidates. And we have to be, I think, nimble enough to be able to negotiate to make the deal.
Thank you. Mary Jo?
I was just doing some math in my head, and as we've been front loading those 40 hours, so that's equivalent to the 5 days, right? But then with the department heads, they're then having to wait that full year to obviously get the additional 13. But that gives us a grand total of 18. 18 days as opposed to Marlene's point where some people are wanting, give me the 6 weeks or maybe the 5 weeks. Well, 18 days is almost 5 weeks. But I don't know, maybe front loading a little more. Just curiosity, Adam. Just doing math, so.
Yeah, no, it's
Just a thought to throw out.
Mhm.
right, right.
I'm not sure how 18 days is 5 weeks. Tell me more.
4 weeks,
It's 3 weeks and
5,
3
10,
weeks and 3 days.
and 3 days.
Weekends.
So close to.
okay, all right. Just wondered if we were doing the same kinds of
Well,
math.
there's somewhere in there, there's probably a holiday or two in there, given the way our holiday schedule runs, right? So there's at least one holiday every month, so.
Because yeah, 5 weeks sounds good to me. 18 days.
I was getting there.
Okay. Do we need more direction? Do we need to talk about this more? Where are we?
So I'm not sure if where we landed was yes. I think we landed with no, do not set up a standard executive amount, but leave it negotiable. So that's what I had thought I'd heard, Brian. That was, for me, kind of toying with. It sounded like Commissioner Fournier. I would love to hear if that's what you thought you said.
Yes.
Okay. So Commissioner Bell, if you're in agreement, I think where we are is we don't want to set a hard, fast rule. We want to make this flexible so that we can respond to the need. What a doctor needs, which is who you are currently negotiating with, is a different thing, most likely, than what the IS director, had we been able to hire one, might have asked for, or the HR, as we look at the other directors we've been working with and the other executives, when we talk about your CFO, what they're expecting may be different than what the doctor's expecting, right? It's just, there are some industry expectations across probably the entire county in the executive pay table.
And your position, specific to yours, is equivalent to a healthcare president level. I just think there's a higher expectation.
And we can look at the individual coming in as well at some level. So if you're saying it ends up being a recent graduate, because that's who we can find and who applies, that expectation of a much greater pool of vacation probably doesn't apply, because this is maybe their first job, second job, third job, as opposed to 25 years of experience, right? I think there is the ability to look at that within that hiring, which I like, because I think it is different if it's an early job in your career and what your expectation is versus the end of your career and your expectation.
True.
Because you did put in your time somewhere.
Yeah.
At the end of your career. So I think we've left it fluid. Is that helpful
So-
or
well,
not
so-
helpful?
Yes, and if it's left open to be fluid, how fluid is it? Does that mean I could say to the person who said, I need to have 6 weeks, I've only ever taken 2, and this is the person we want, or is it up to the 156 days that other executives or directors, department directors were kind of supportive of and wouldn't offend, so to speak? How do we negotiate that? And what's the authority to negotiate in that fluidity?
Yeah, that's a great question.
6 weeks is what's in my mind, like that's the far end. But let's Rachel. I see your eyebrows.
She's like,
My head. They have gone totally off the rails again. Totally off the rails. You brought us good advice and we threw it out.
It is very unclear. So
Yeah. So do we need to cap it, like the ability to negotiate up to X? Or can we, because the people who are making the decision are trusted decision makers, can we say, dependent on experience or negotiate as needed?
Sure. I think you have a lot of discretion. I think there's a lot of variables here, a lot of new information. I think I would like a little more time to unpack this and get some other opinions just to make sure you have everything before you to make a good decision. But in lieu of that, I think the urgency is the advertisement, right? We don't have a candidate we're negotiating with right now.
Well, I'll find out today.
Oh, okay.
There's one candidate, the one that I mentioned,
You're
that
unmuted.
was talking about 6 weeks and has many years of experience. And we're like, this is our perfect
So,
candidate.
can I, this is
So-
Commissioner Fournier with a question.
Go ahead,
Uh,
Paul.
Yeah, for that example that Marlene's giving, I guess I don't see the big hangup of just letting her say, okay, you hear you 6 weeks. We're still gonna have other candidates, I'm assuming, so if we just don't give them a hard no, is that enough for them to still be on the line? As we move forward in the process? That's what scares me about putting a hard line on the end. But if someone in the beginning says, I'm not even interested, in less than 6 weeks, and you think they're a fantastic candidate, but we also are gonna go through the process, I don't wanna lose them over 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Agree.
so I that's what I feel like. If you think they're a good candidate, then you should say, I think if we just have the ability of saying, everything's negotiable with an executive because of all of these things, like Rachel was saying, there's so many variables. I just feel like, I feel if we lock ourselves in any of it, this is not, we're not talking about union stuff here. We have the ability to be flexible and realistic and pragmatic with the current. So I guess if that person that wants 6 weeks, I would say to them, everything's possible. Let me get back to you. But yes, then that's something we would definitely be interested in talking to you about it if that's the one factor. So anyway.
Yeah, I wouldn't want it to be a deal breaker.
Mhm.
Agreed. I would love, Rachel, if you could, as you said, unpack this a little bit more now that you've kind of gotten the direction that we're going, and see if there is something that works to bring back to us that says, okay, I think I heard you say you all want flexibility and we don't want to leave directors with absolutely no direction. So what does that look like? And I don't have in front of me, for example, the table that we use for everyone who's here. There might be some natural breaks that just make sense. Like we would say, oh, well, in the first 5 years, it's been this. What if we, they've been a 30-year employee somewhere else, that's what they're bringing, let's set them into the second tier or the third tier, or maybe there's something that makes sense. So I guess I look forward to that information.
And I just want to add that we've done this even at the sheriff's office with like with Michelle Raymond, who just recently retired. When she came over from OSP, there's always a little bit of negotiation because of her. She literally didn't have to change her office, so she came over with 25 years experience. So we would have been dumb not to make that consideration on certain things.
Mhm.
Right.
And it would be helpful when looking at it on and I keep using the PTO example because of all of the language that was associated with that, even with the flexibility to do, up to 6 weeks or 8 weeks or whatever, just so candidates know it's subject to this, you can use it in this period of time. That's where I started, like Richard was going, wow, my head's like, got a lot of info. There was a lot of information in there. So maybe working with legal counsel and the labor lawyer to say, oh, you need these clauses in there and what happens, that would be helpful too, because I couldn't represent that to a candidate. Yeah, so.
Yeah, and I guess for me, I wonder somewhat if you are giving more vacation in line with their experience, if then the front loading becomes less of an issue, which then the repayment becomes less of an issue, right? So, because it's that I do have to be here 90 days or whatever that would normally make sense, but then I am accruing at a rate that allows me to get to vacation more the type I'm used to as opposed to the 8 hours a month. So
Yeah.
I'm not sure if that front loading continues to be so crucial if, we're adjusting rate.
Yeah.
And then, because the string, so for me, the thing that gives me the most pause and nervousness is the strings, right? I mean, it's complicated. You've got to take it out of their check, and there's lots of laws about what you can and can't
Yep.
take out of a check without their approval. So really, you're relying on them to say, "You're right here. Let me write you a check." I think it's more complicated than I would hope we would have to get into. I would hope maybe we could solve it on the other end, which is we're giving you what you're worth, but you will have to accrue it, as opposed to here, let's hand you this up front because it's less than you really, are willing and wanting to take. So don't know how that lands for
No.
others.
I think it's just I'm used to getting this, even when literally they're saying, no, I haven't ever used it,
No, but
but you're not going to give it to me?
yeah,
So
my
I
value
cannot
is
use it?
attached to that.
Yeah, I mean, it's industry probably, and yeah. So we'll get back to you on this particular one, and if we have a candidate now, I will work with you, Rachel and Brian, whoever else, if we need to work out some of those details. Yeah, okay.
Great. Does that mean we're hopeful about the doctor that I met?
I don't know, maybe a different one,
Oh, okay.
going back to our first candidate.
Oh,
Yeah, we'll see.
Awesome that you have more than one.
That's the only two
Okay.
since October, but
but it's two. It's two, and one of them came to visit.
yeah, that was good.
Okay. Are there more things we need to talk about?
For now, I won't come up with any more additions to things yet. In the next 4 months, I still have time, right? I can come up.
Okay. Well, great. This is a big project. It's a lot of work. Thank you. And thank you, Rachel.
And thank you.
Mhm. Okay. So if there's nothing further on this subject,
No, and that was.
this is the only topic on our list today. Does anybody have anything else? Commissioner Fournier?
No, I don't.
Okay.
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Just.
I just want to say one thing. I do appreciate the work everybody's been doing on this, what we talked about today, and Rachel with the executive team. I really appreciate the effort that we're doing. So thank you, everyone involved.
Thank you.
Human resources. Thanks.
Yeah, I was just gonna reflect quickly for my fellow commissioners on yesterday's tour with the Grand Ronde. I thought it was a fabulous tour, super fun to be with them in the forest. And one of my takeaways from that is I will be figuring out how many acres we currently have of U.S. Forest Service in Tillamook County, what we are getting paid off current harvest, just so that as part of the conversation, when we look at would we want to do a letter of support for this transfer? What is the impact for Tillamook County ourselves, the schools, et cetera, who share revenue off of those federal lands? So I don't know if that came up in the conversation that any of you are having, but it did come up in my car. And so I'm doing the work to try to just figure that out, to try to in some way quantify for Tillamook County, just because I expect that that's something the public may want to know and that we should be able to provide to them if we are supporting a transfer of lands that are currently generating revenue for us. Just as we have with the stringer pearls, when we were looking at the enterprise zones, we identified what that cost to the county might be before we decide to move forward. And I would suggest that I'll be trying to do that on this one.
Terrific. I appreciate that. We did not talk about that in my car, but I looked at the map and it didn't look to me like there's a lot of the property in question in Tillamook County. So did you think
It was
differently?
about 16,000 acres.
Okay.
I think that they gave us a map and it was like 10,000 in Yamhill and 16,000 in Tillamook County.
Okay.
So
So, yeah, so
Out
to
of the
figure
26.
out what that means to us.
yeah.
Yeah, good.
Yeah, I appreciate you doing that, Aaron. I was going to ask that of you. I was going to reach out to the U.S. Forest Service staff as well. I just on the side to see how they feel about it, what their thoughts were on it, based with their staff issues as well. I think doing what you're talking about. It's just a good comprehensive look at everything. Even if we think it's a great idea, it's still nice to know all of the details.
Agreed. I stopped by there on my way through today, on my way back from Salem, and got the name and phone number of the newest district ranger. So
Great.
he's about 2 months in, so I will be reaching out to him as well, just to wrap that up. But that was all I had. I just thought while we were all together, it'd be good to have
Great.
that piece.
Yeah, yeah, I agree that the tour was great. Yeah. Anything else? The good of the order?
Nope.
All right, well, then we can conclude this meeting at 3:00 sharp. Thank you, everyone, for participating. Thank you.
Thank you.
So Marlene, do you have a few minutes then?
Yeah.
We'll start visit on Tuesday, and we'll miss our visit again on Tuesday.
Yeah, I just wanted to check on one, like, I have with you, Rachel. I checked in